Hey, it's me, Robert Phoenix. I'm back for another edition of the Astro Weather, and it is the 9th of May, 2023. And I've yet to have a sip of coffee this morning, so please indulge me in this moment. It's me, Robert Phoenix. I'm back for another edition of the and I can hear myself. And I like hearing myself, but I don't like hearing myself that much. Anyway, how is everybody? Yeah, it's weird. It just feels like how do I express the energy? How do I express the energy? I don't know. Just personally, the energy feels very unsettled. There's just a very unsettled vibe in the air, and who knows? Maybe this is just a reflection of my own personal life, kind of what's going on with all the moving pieces of my personal life. But I kind of scope what's going on in the world, and with these mundane events, and it really feels like coming off of the eclipse, this lunar eclipse. It's not just what happens on the eclipse or prior to the eclipse, but after the eclipse, there is also a lot of information to take in. We have about a week and a half of post-eclipse energy, and here in Texas, it's been very intense. We've had shootings, we've had kidnappings. We have this piece around the border, which feels like it's about to explode. So these are all very much post-eclipse energies, and in the United States chart. The United States is a Sag rising. There's a couple different charts for the United States. There's Sag rising, there's Gemini rising, and there's Scorpio rising. Those are the three that people generally tend to work with. I work with the Sag rising chart because, as a country, this country was involved in expansion, and that's what Sag rising does. It expands. Sag plays a role in religion, and religion has been a very big part of the development and the evolution of the United States, right? So that means that the United States has a 12th house that is going to be defined by Scorpio. So that eclipse that took place on last week was in the 12th house of the U.S., which means there's things going on behind the scenes, right? When you get into the 12th house, and you have personalities that are in the 12th house, like Joe Biden, who we've talked about. He's a 12th house person. There are just things that are happening at levels that we're not aware of, right? So with that eclipse in this part of the world, in this country, in the chart of this country, that eclipse is facilitating, I think, in a lot of ways, these concepts around Scorpio, which are power and resources, and even the even the underworld. There's been some talk, especially with the kidnapping and the shooting in Houston, that this was cartel related, right? And you're going to start to hear more about the cartel stuff, and you're going to start to hear a lot more about potentially an open armed conflict with Mexico, which I've been talking about for a while, and that has to do with the upcoming eclipses. But we can kind of see, or at least feel. I think feel is a better word than see the energy as far as the kind of the back end of that last eclipse experience. So let's get into where we are weather-wise today. Here we go. So we have this interesting Sun-Uranus conjunction. Wow. That is radical. That's very radical. And in Taurus, so we're dealing with sort of this radical relationship with the earth and with materials and our relationship with the earth itself. It's days where I think that the protest quotient is quite high today. Like the protest quotient is very high, especially around things like the climate. and I had no idea what it would look like, but today seemed like a prime climate protest day. Now there can be some really interesting innovation, but this is a, what do they call it now? Cazimi. This is so tight, this conjunction, so tight. And it's interesting because we think of Taurus as being solid and granite-like, slow, methodical, uh, bound and related to the earth. You throw Uranus in there, and all of a sudden now you've got a bull with a turbo jetpack, right? That's what the energy is like today. So, bull in a china shop, quite possibly sextile to Mars, 23 degrees Cancer. So now we have a Sun Uranus conjunction and a Sun Uranus Mars sextile. Look, if your energy is headed in the right direction today, look out. Look out. Look for some shortcuts today too. Sun Uranus conjunctions are always good for shortcuts. Can I do it faster, better, smarter? I kind of like the energy. Once I wake up, I'll take advantage of it. Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's really good energy. And we're getting to that third decan of Cancer, which puts it in the Scorpio decan. And when we get into that decan, things like survival, rations, Scorpio brings a very finite quality to that decan. It's all binary. It's black and white, life or death when we get into that decan. So I think that's also in the air today. One of the things, and I can see this with Jupiter, which is about to ingress into Taurus, and we'll have a discussion about that probably tomorrow. But one of the things that I've been certainly seeing and reading about is the absolute exorbitant cost of living in terms of rentals, and it's not getting easier, and people are being tossed out of their homes and put into very precarious positions. And to me, that's the Mars Jupiter square that we're looking at. Again, this Mars in Cancer, we're dealing with these elements that are connected to our security. They're connected to our sense of being able to have the goods and all of the accoutrements. And we're talking basics here. We're not even talking about a luxury, a novelty, right? And so when we get it again, that Scorpionic decan, it becomes very intense. And that square with Jupiter amplifies everything. So on the quest for shelter, which is really a big part of this energy today, if you're looking for a place to live, what day is it? It's the 9th, so you're in the beginning of the month still. I would say sticker shock. Sticker shock is everywhere. Even with used cars, sticker shock is, I mean, the price is just going through the roof. And, the conspiratorial dot connector me says this is all by design, and I would not be too far off the point if I wasn't going to address that, because it is. So look at Sun Uranus and then look at the sextile to Mars. How do you hack? How do you beat the system? How do you save money? Right? Some of the things that you can do, these are all basic things, is have buying blocks, right? Like, so have blocks of people where there's 5, 6, 7 of you, and you go in and you buy bulk, right? And then it cuts your cost for things by, say, a quarter, right? So as long as you have the ability to store whatever kind of bulk goods you have, that's a really good strategy. So you want to look at things like that today. How can you team up with people? How can you find value in a way that is unique. And so that's part of the plot, right? That is definitely part of the plot. We have Mars moving into an opposition with Pluto. And this is a tricky opposition, because we know Pluto goes retrograde. And it'll go retrograde pretty soon here. I think, was it May 25th? And then by that time, Mars will be in opposition with Pluto. And the call for gun control is going to be very dramatic and very heated. You'll see all the dramatic posturing with Mars and Leo, and opposing that Pluto and Aquarius, for the good of all, for the greater good. That's going to be a very intense opposition, very, very intense. And so we'll talk about that as it approaches. We have Venus now in Cancer. So the last weather report we did, Venus was in Gemini, but that changed. And now we have a nice little Venus trine with Saturn here. So take your time, be patient with people. I'm working on it. I'm working on it in my own life. My patience factor is, I'm flexing my patience muscle. And it can work, right? The key with Venus in Cancer today is all about empathy. You don't want to have too much empathy, because that Venus-Neptune square will bleed you out, and you'll wind up giving people money that you'll regret later on, right? So cost and expense is also, again, in the air. This is part of the theme today, like people asking for loans, people asking for financial favors, whatever they are. That's all in the air. And I would say take a conservative approach. Take a conservative long-term approach with that Venus Saturn trine. That's because that's a nice approach to have, right? Like, okay, let's slow down. Don't give in to panic. Don't, if somebody is in a state where they're unsure, or they're nervous about their finances and they're looking for help, right? What you want to be able to do is stay open and stay empathic, but also stay patient, and don't give in to the emotional crisis. This is very important, right? You got to have a steady hand at the tiller here. And as Venus moves deeper into Cancer, it'll begin to move away from that mathematical square. We would have had more of that yesterday and the day before that, but it's still in the air, right? It's still in the air. So it's also in a sextile with Jupiter, because now it's like, well, you have the resources. Why don't you just go ahead and use them for me? Well, let's slow the roll a little bit. Right. So the Venus Jupiter sextile can be good, but again, Cancer is a conservative sign. It doesn't take wild swings, like, say, Venus and Leo would take a wild swing at things, or Venus and Sag, and even Venus and Gemini, kind of splitting the difference between caution and risk, right? That's what Venus and Gemini would do. So it is a steady, conservative approach to finances and resources, and practice some patience. Today is a complex day. I mean, no doubt. Mercury's still retrograde. It'll be retrograde until next week, and it's moving into a tighter square with Pluto. So people, when they are addressing things and articulating their feelings about things, or articulating their position, it's going to become very intense. When you get into Pluto and those Pluto squares, it's like life or death, right? So we like to think that with a sign like Taurus, we could just take it easy and put one foot in front of the other, and hopefully our feet even have to have shoes on them, one foot in front of the other on the ground beneath them, which is supportive and welcoming, right? I mean, that's kind of the vibe of Taurus. That's what we want. We want to kind of ease into the sort of the end of spring and the beginning of summer, but that's not the energy in the air. There's a lot of very insistent energy. There's a lot of dramatic energy. There's people that are freaking out. The finances, the resources, those are all very big issues here. So practice some patience, practice some empathy. We've got the moon in Capricorn, which is always good for being cool, reserved, right? And we've got some nice trines going on with the moon and Mercury. That's a nice trine. It's in trine with Jupiter. So if you can practice a little bit of that kind of cool Capricornian CEO vibe and mindset, it's a little bit better. Even though, and it's interesting because that Venus in Cancer just wants to help everybody. It just wants to help, but that moon in Capricorn is like, no, let's help who we can, and let's conserve resources. Because I think that's an important part of the discussion for today. All right, so there's your astro weather. Let's take a look at who our star of the day is. It's funny. Last night I was looking at potential candidates for the star of the day, and I had the wrong day. I was going to do a porn star, Bonnie Rotten, and I had it all plotted out. And I'm glad the day wasn't right. It's a little too early in the morning to start talking about anal. So let's go into today's star of the day. One of the greatest traitors in modern history, Harry S. Truman. Yes, today is the president's birthday. You know, Harry S. Truman, I chose that picture for a reason. Harry S. Truman was a Mason. He was a Mason. And not only was he a Mason, but he was also a Shriner as well, right? So he got to power really because of his Masonic connections, which, by the way, is not all that unfamiliar to presidents or people who become president. They usually belong to some kind of group or some kind of alumni or some kind of order. Truman was one of the most outwardly proud of his apron and his fellowship. And we can see that here with Mars in the 11th house, right? This is groups and organizations. And he's standing real beneath a picture of the sun. Of course, Leo is ruled by the sun. And we have G in the background or on the sun, which some people believe is short for the great architect of the universe, right? Inside the solar logos. But this is where he gets his power from. And even a T-square. Look, this guy has such a hidden agenda. The thing that I find interesting about Truman is the lack of an inner life. Like there's no inner life here. He's going to use Libra on his ascendant, true node, true man, true node. And so he actually, if you back and look at some of the headlines, what was it? Dewey, he was running against Thomas Dewey. And I think it was, he has a newspaper article that says Dewey wins and he's smiling. And Truman was a shoo-in because of his lodge connections. And I believe he probably lost the election. And just think about that, waking up the next day, just like we did with Trump, and all of a sudden, this bespectacled little haberdasher from Missouri winds up becoming president of the United States. Well, how does it happen? It's all behind the scenes. You know, it's all over here. Sun, Neptune, Pluto, right? 8th house, Pluto in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, Chiron in Gemini. Yeah, but it's all 8th house. I think it's Mercury's retrograde too. I never thought of Harry Truman as being, all that bright, but what he was really good at was social climbing. He was discovered by some of his haberdasher friends in Missouri, and they were the ones through the lodge and through their connections promoted him because, of course, he would agree whatever they wanted him to do. Now, Cancer on the midheaven, we get that kind of folksy vibe with Truman. You know what I mean? The buck stops here. His famous saying, that's so Cancerian. The buck stops here. And he's got this weird Venus, which is a borderline singleton, right? Ninth house. So we get ninth house, we get into beliefs and affiliations with, well, not really affiliations, that's over here, but beliefs, belief systems, religion. He's probably a Christian poser with Venus in the ninth house. I think he's beholden. This is a guy who becomes president. And what does he do? He signs off on the United Nations. That's number one. And number two, without hesitation, he signs off on Israel becoming the nation state that it is, right? That's all Venus and Cancer, ninth house. Saturn is also in the ninth house as well, in Gemini. But this guy, he's a wheeler dealer. It's like, I can't think of a name that would be less fitting to the little snake of a man that Harry Truman was. It's almost like it was a psyop, right? Let's take the guy named Truman, let's turn him into essentially the biggest fucking globalist lodge sellout that we can find. And that's exactly what Harry Truman was. He was a total sellout. And just look at those two things. Cosign United Nations, cosign the development of Israel. And look, you may say Israel needs to exist, whatever, right? But it was a hostile takeover. It was a hostile takeover of the country. You had England basically giving it away when it didn't even own it in the first place. And then you have things like the King David bombing, and you have really, really like terrorist groups that are in charge of ultimately running people out of Israel, right? So Truman is the guy that greenlights all that stuff. So he's an internationalist, and he has the easiest fucking job of any president. All he has to do is manage the wartime capital or the post-wartime capital that is going to be spent on industrialization in this country, because that's exactly what happened. But he's a backroom wheeler dealer with all of this stuff in the eighth house, right? And he's into power. The dude is definitely into power. He's got the Mercury-Pluto conjunction. And in Gemini, he'll do anything. Anything. And because it's in Gemini, right? People have Mercury-Pluto conjunctions, but it's different in Gemini. So all of you who are listening, you don't have to feel offended because you don't have Pluto in Gemini. See how I did that? Whew. I'm glad that's not me. And he's got Chiron here also. You know what else I think about Harry Truman? This is just on the fly. I think it's crazy. I think this guy was fucking crazy. He looks like a crazy guy, doesn't he? He's got crazy eyes. He's got that Chiron Mercury conjunction Pluto. He's also compromised. And he's got that moon in Scorpio in the second house. The only thing that's below the horizon. The only thing that's below the horizon. That's it. And it's in Scorpio. It's all about power. It's all about power. It's all about money. And it's all about materiality. This is not a great chart for a president. I'm just telling you that anytime you get a president with sun in the eighth house or sun in the 12th house, they're not great charts because they're always doing something behind the scenes. At least with Trump, he had a sun in the 10th house, and you could see that he was taking all this heat. There was a weird transparency with Trump. a very weird transparency. It's because he's out there all the time, but not with this guy. No, he's got a hidden motivation, very hidden motivation. All right, there's your star of the day, Harry Truman. Now I'm on the clock. I got to get my other show together, which is coming up, and I have to give you a graphic for that. And the graphic is right here, and that's 15 minutes of flame. And to the best of my ability, I'm going to jump into some of the stuff that's happening here in Texas, which I don't think bodes well for where all this is going. But meet me over on 15minutesoflame.com and hang out with us, hang out with Chattaria. It's a very good crew. And I'm wondering if my buddy Chris, let's go into True Ham Science before we leave. I wonder if he is still looking for people to vote for, yes, let's do this. Let's get the vote out. True Ham Science, of course, is the sponsor of the show. And Chris is trying to, you don't even have to buy anything today. If you want to, you can. You can vote right there. Vote for us at Austin Chronicle, best CBD purveyor of 2023. So there you go. And right there, free delivery for orders of $150 or more, 30-day money-back guarantee, stands by the product. If you decide to get some CBD, type in 15MINS, 15MINS on checkout, and guess what you'll get? You'll get a free product. So let's give our friend a hand and see if he can climb to the top of hemp purveyors in the city of Austin. All right, that's me. I'm out of here. Robert Phoenix. Come on over to 15 Minutes of Flame. Maybe I'll be more awake by then. And in the meantime, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. It's good to be back. I'll see you guys on the other side. Bye for now.